All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Shit You Don't Learn in College. Today we've got my new friend, Ed Parcaut on. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So for everybody who doesn't know Ed, obviously I now get to know you because I've known you for a total of a week and a half. But for everybody who doesn't know you, I'd love for everybody to get the maybe 3-minute story of how you went from the Navy to the tech world to the mortgage space as a business owner, and a little bit of insight into your journey.
Well, so let's go a hair back before that. So
Yeah.
I grew up. I lost my dad at 12, hairy cell leukemia.
Yeah.
From Agent Orange, all that whole story. So I didn't have the dad there, but I had grandparents who had a dairy, so I'd go out there and work on the weekends and the summertime. So I learned how to, back when everybody would work. It's a little different now, and so we worked. What I mean is, as a kid, not all kids work now. My kids didn't work when they were going to high school,
Yeah.
so I learned that. Had a job right out of during high school. Joined the Navy to see the world. Got to see San Diego. Basically, once I got down there. They had stuff about they needed help in technology, even though I was a corpsman and stuff. So, but I did what you're supposed to with the military. You get your bachelor's and master's while I was in. When I got out, I went in the computer industry, and I'm like, I want to do computers because that's what I've been doing. And after a while, it just wasn't there for me. And so a neighbor of mine actually owned a mortgage company, and so I joined their mortgage company, and that's been history ever since. Started multiple of my own companies, and just enjoy helping people build personal wealth through home ownership, and that's what I've been doing.
So when you say mortgage company, I know what that means, but for anybody who doesn't understand what that means, maybe they're not familiar with the term. How would you explain that to someone?
So a mortgage company is basically what's sad is we don't even have mortgages in California. We have trust deeds.
Yeah.
So it's really the wrong term in California, but basically it's what you use to help buy your house.
Yeah.
Buy residential property. And that's the funniest thing is we should be called trust deed companies, right? Not mortgage companies. So.
Yeah. So basically you're helping people get the loans that would be able to buy the house.
Correct.
Awesome.
That is correct.
So how
it's kind of boring stuff, but I enjoy it.
Well, you and I were talking about this, right? Like you're great with numbers and you love helping people. So obviously this ended up being an area that actually worked really well for you, right? Question for you. How old were you when you got into the mortgage space?
27.
27. So you kind of found what was, your calling per se, or something that you were actually passionate about and enjoyed doing when you were 27. Yet a lot of us are asked to make the decisions around what we want to do with our career when we're like 17, 18 years old, right? Right. So you obviously went into the military. Let's go back in your story a little bit. You went into the military to go see the world. Do you think there's anything that you mentioned kind of you just went through the process? Do you think there's anything you could have done there to start to learn what really mattered to you earlier on in life?
No, but I did. So I went in to be in the medical field, and I thought I wanted to become a doctor or something along that line.
Yeah.
And I realized I enjoyed helping people, just not helping people in the medical field. That's not what I like doing. All right.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, so the question is, yes, I learned a lot through the Navy about how to deal with things and come out the other side. The biggest thing they tell us when you get out of the military, lose who you are. And that's the one thing that I tell people not to do. Be brutally honest like you learned in the military. Be direct, all that kind of stuff. Because in my industry, I have to give bad news all the time, or tell you the way it really is. I need to be direct, and you need to understand I'm telling you the way it is. The real estate agents are the ones that tell you how beautiful this house is and all this stuff. I bring you back to reality about whether or not you can afford it and why were you looking at that before you got qualified in the first place. So all the way through got me to where I am now. You understand?
Yeah, I do understand. So obviously now being in the mortgage space, what is it about the mortgage space that really drives you forward? Why are you so passionate about it?
I really enjoy helping people get their first home. Okay. Right? There is no other feeling in the world than your first home, right? It's like your first car, your first job, first girlfriend, your first. But a lot of times people don't realize that they can buy instead of rent. And it's sometimes cheaper I mean, especially down where you guys are. I mean, you guys pay an arm and a leg. Because I remember I used to live down there for 20 years and moved up to Northern California. So I know exactly how expensive it is.
So let's talk about that for a second. What are some of the reasons that people rent versus buying? Is it they just don't know, or is it that they don't? I know from a. Go ahead.
I was gonna say because they think you need 20% down.
Yeah.
That's
Which
it
you
right
don't.
there.
How much do you? I know this, but how much do you need down to get your first home?
All right. Well, depending on where you're at. I'm going to go military. VA loans for all military people, 0 down. USDA, which is a rural product, which sounds like, oh my God, it's got to be way out there. But you could do it probably in Temecula. You could do it in some parts of Fallbrook. You could do it in some parts where in Northern California, you can do it up in Tuolumne County, other stuff. That's 100% financing. It's rural. But you basically go to USDA website, put in the address. They'll tell you if it qualifies or not. That's 100% financing. Other than that, you have FHA with 3.5% down. You have first-time home buyer conventional, 3% down. Then you can do 5% down, 10% down, whatever you want. The biggest thing that a lot of people don't realize, like a lot of people want to buy a second home, right? So they have their first, or they're renting, and they don't want to buy where they're at because they can't afford it, but they want to buy a house somewhere else. Well, you could buy that as a second home with only 10% down.
Really?
And a lot of people, everybody goes, what? Really? Yeah. But I don't own a home. It doesn't matter. Where you live is your house, whether you rent it or you own it. The place that you go and visit as a vacation home, that's the second home, and that's 10% down minimum.
So if you
still,
question for you, if you buy that second place, and what if you were that second place, if you were to rent it out as like a rental property, can that be 10% down, or does that have to be higher?
If you're going to rent it out on a regular basis, like month to month, right? You rent it, that would have to be 20 to 25% down.
If it was like, what about short-term rental, like an Airbnb or VRBO or something?
If you buy it, how about this? You buy it as a second home. What you do after that is up to you.
So you can buy it as a second home with 10% down, and then you can.
If you're gonna, because that's gonna be and they know that you're occasionally might rent it, but as a second home, yes. However, you can't go in there and go, I'm gonna rent this and I want to do 10% down. Can't work. It won't work.
Not gonna work that way. Yeah.
Yeah, you tell them. So, and that's a lot of people buy a home, a second home, a vacation home, and they let people use it, right? And they charge them occasionally. That's okay. But if you're going to put it, all right, you're a 12, a month rental agreement, all that, that's mortgage fraud. Mortgage fraud is investigated by the FBI now.
That is illegal.
Prior to 2006, it was not a big deal. Nobody investigated it. Then the IRS got involved after 2006. The FBI gets involved now. It's a lot of big deals. So do not do mortgage fraud.
Thank you for that public disclaimer. What would you say? I'm actually really interested in this. I love talking about real estate. It's something I'm really passionate about. I own a couple of investment properties in different states. I've always followed the mentality of rent where you live, own where you rent, meaning like rent where I actually live and then own the places that I can rent out for investment. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you should own everywhere. So own where you live.
So
one thing about so let's talk about where you live, right?
Yeah.
San Diego County went up this year 28%.
Yeah.
Right.
So would have been a real shitty investment to own that.
Yes. So that's $28,000 on every 100,000.
That the property was not every 100,000 that you had put into it, right? Because
no, this is what the value of the property is, right?
So for example, and I think the word is arbitrage, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but for example, you said I could buy a property. Let's say I even put 10% down. So if I bought $1 million home for $100,000, and now that $1 million home went up 28%, it would be
$280,000 the first year.
$280,000, and I only invested $100,000. So technically, that is a 280% return. Is that correct?
It's way more. It's more than that because you leverage. So I always tell people you want to put down the minimum you can because the more you leverage, the more you make. If you buy stocks, say you buy $100,000 worth of stocks. You have to put $100,000 in there to buy those stocks. Or
real estate's the only thing where you don't have to put all of your money in there.
No, other people's money.
Yeah. So I love that idea. So the other big argument that I make, I love having this conversation with you because you're literally just talking me out of renting right now, which is great. So the other argument that me and my wife have are we are millennials and we hate being tied down to something, right? So that was the big idea of like, okay, we'd rather rent where we live in case we want to live somewhere else in a year, we want to go do something else, and we don't want to be tied down, right? Do you have any thoughts on that when it comes to owning where you live?
Yeah. Again, how long you been where you're at?
8 months.
Okay. And so here, all right, let's just say you're there a year.
Yeah.
Right. You can't use this for everything, but I mean, the appreciation value going forward, I mean, and you got inflation coming, you have all this other stuff coming, right? The one thing that always appreciate during inflationary periods is real estate as an asset always goes up in value. When we're going to hit a recession, it just because we're going to eat up all this stimulus money, we're going to hit it. There's no way to get around it. There's only been 2 times in history that house values have went down during a recession. 2 times in history.
Yeah.
The Great Recession, which it should have been called a depression because it was the number of GDP went down.
This was 2008, 2009.
Started in 2007 through 2012, whatever, the Great Recession, right? The reason that happened, and we'll get into a little bit more, but the other time was in the early 90s, 91, I think 92, and we went down 2%. Other than that, every other recession, we went up in value during that period of time.
Huh.
All right.
Interesting.
So everybody's thinking, I'm going to talk about this Great Recession and how it's different than now, if that's okay. This is kind of what we talked
Absolutely.
about last time.
Yeah.
All right. So during the Great Recession, right, what caused us to go into that was a financial crisis of the mortgage industry, basically doing these loans that anybody could get a loan and buy a house. And a lot of these people were buying 2 or 3 houses in a housing tract, right, and then would turn around, rent them, or try to sell them. Right now, can you get 2 or 3 houses yourself in a housing tract? No. One person can't even get a house in there. There's 20 people in front of you. Yeah. So if you look back during that period of time, most people start their housing unit and go out on their own when they're 31 years old. It's average between 31 to 33 if you look back. Yeah. So during that period of time, if you look from 2002 to 2006, when they built all those homes, you go back 31 years, that has to do with something called Roe versus Wade, where the abortion bill was legal, and so the birth rates dropped drastically for the next 10 years, right? Yeah. So you fast forward.
So there were less people. Basically, you're saying there were less people at come 2007, 8, 9. There were significantly less people
prior to that. 2002 to 2006, when they were building all these extra homes, saying that we need them,
and we didn't have more people coming through that actually needed those homes.
No. There was a false sense of we thought we needed them because of the loan programs that were out there, where you could buy a house with a pulse. You can buy it basically at that time. So people were
maybe even not a pulse. You could still get a house.
Right. I mean, there's that movie, The Big Short, where he's in the strip club, and the stripper lady says, "I have 3 homes." How do you have 3 homes as a stripper?
Yeah.
Right. And that's basically what happened. I'm not saying strippers shouldn't own homes. I want to be clear about that. Yeah. Everybody should own a home. But the issue is the fact that the products we had made it seem like we needed that many houses when we didn't. All right. So if we didn't have those products, those houses, the demand for those houses wouldn't have been there, and they wouldn't have produced all those. But so let's fast forward to where we are today, and why people keep thinking we're going to go through a bubble or a bust or whatever. If you look at that period of time, because we went through that, and you were that age where your parents or other people you knew during that period of time lost homes and that kind of stuff, right? And so, and the reason I started a radio show about this is because everybody was uneducated and they think they shouldn't own a home. You said, millennials, we don't want to be tied down. That's BS. Freaking buy a house, make money, then go do what the hell you want. Excuse my language. I don't know if I could cuss on this, but
it's
need
called
to
shit you don't
stop
want to
thinking.
You can say whatever the hell you want, Ed. Go for it.
All right. So fast forward to today, you go back 31 years. We're in like the 3rd year of this huge population birth rate growth, and it's going to happen for the next 7 to 8 years. And bear with me, I don't have my charts with me, but so we're not going to see a downturn in values.
We're not going to see it. We're not going to see it. It's simple supply and demand, right? Like Correct. We have more people that are going to be demanding homes over the next 7 or 8 years. Is basically what you're saying.
Right, and we are 5 million homes short right now.
5 million?
Right. 5 million nationwide.
Is that's in the U.S.?
In the U.S. In the U.S.
Where? How do you? I've heard that stat like 3 or 4 times now in the last couple of months. How do you define that? Like, where does that come from?
It comes from the different people who track how many houses we need and all that kind of stuff.
Like, so people are coming of that age.
Yeah. But so I've seen the number from 4 million to 5.5 million. I'm just telling you right now, we're short homes. I can tell you without even looking. And I've seen some charts now. Huh?
Is part of that because we haven't been able to build as much because of like COVID and supplies and those sorts of things over the last
all right. So if you look at periods of time, from 2010 to 2019, we built the same amount of homes as we built from 1930 to 1939.
Okay.
All right. Okay. If you go back the 10-year period before that, it's like, millions, 25 or whatever, some ridiculous number, right?
Wow.
We overbuilt. So if you look at that, we built hardly any homes, if you understand that. Because you think about, we built like 600 homes one year. We need 1.5 million homes on a regular basis for population growth, period.
So as the population grows, we need about 1.5 million new homes
each
per year. And now we're nationwide. 5 million behind. So we're technically 3 years behind already.
Well, it's worse than that because basically they can only, right, I think the max they're doing right now is 1.6 million, 1.7 million, right, this year.
Yeah.
And they say they need to do their normal 1.5 million plus 750,000 extra.
Yeah.
And it will take 10 years to get caught up.
Wow.
But that's not taking into account the birth rates either.
So that's not even taking into account the fact that we have an increased birth rate that is now coming to that age of 31, 32, 33.
Yes, that is correct. And the other issue you run into, there's not enough land. You go, think about it. Look where you are. Where are they going to build them? Out in the ocean? Inland more? Well, if you're going to build them inland more in that desert, why don't you just move to another desert?
Another desert that's a little bit less expensive than this desert here in San Diego, yeah.
Right, and I mean, because that's how California, right? They were saying a lot of people were leaving the Bay Area and moving to where we are up in Tahoe, other places. Yes, that happened. However, they sold that house at top dollar and had 20 people behind them trying to buy that house in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Because so I'm assuming you're still a fan of like location is king. Like if you are going to get somewhere that people will want in the future, or.
Well, I you know what? I don't know if there's a place that people aren't going to want.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the thing for me is I'm not big on relocating out of the state of California. And the reason is, I mean, I hate our politics. I think we're a one-party system. I think it needs to be changed because not everybody's represented, and that's a problem. But let's not get into that part. But once I leave California, there's something I have to deal with that I don't have to deal with in California.
What?
You know what that is?
What?
Weather. Weather. Right?
Yeah.
You go to Nevada, it's hot a lot. Arizona, all those places. You go to Texas, humidity, golf ball hail, tornadoes.
Yep.
Right? All right. So a lot of people say I'm moving to Texas because I'm going to save money. I can buy a house there. Did you know their property tax is 3%?
I did actually. I've looked at. I don't know if anybody else knew that, but I did know that.
Yeah. So they actually, if you run the number, if you don't make $400,000 a year, you're not going to benefit from going to Texas.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But if you only, a lot of people we lost in this last year, the year before, net migration was people who made $50,000 to $100,000 because they can't afford a place to live here in California. So they move. Yes, if that's where your income is, you're going to have to move somewhere in order to buy because you do not want to rent. The rent, if you look at the rent numbers, they're going up. They're not leveling off. They're going up crazy. Where affordability of owning a home is at the lowest it's been since the Great Recession pandemic, not the pandemic, but the recession area, where those houses were so inexpensive, even though rates were higher, they were more affordable. But if you look today, we're so close to that, and house prices are up, interest rates are low. We're still low on interest rates, even though they've ticked up some. And when I got in this business, I took people from 13 to 9, and they love me. If I tell somebody they're getting a 2.99, they think I'm taking advantage of them. So.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So I think I want to talk about that for a second, right? Because like you mentioned, I think now you said so home ownership is at an all-time low, but it is coming up.
No,
right? Yeah,
it's affordability
affordability.
is at a very affordability meaning that you can afford it, right?
Yeah,
That's at a very high affordability right now. Compared, the only time it was better was during the Great Recession when the values were so low. Okay.
Yeah, so more affordable, and also rental prices have gone through the roof right now. So, question for you on that one: if I'm let's say I'm a starting entrepreneur, or let's say I'm in a 9 to 5 and I'm looking to start to take advantage of this. Like, what advice would you give somebody who is not they haven't owned a home before? Maybe they are 30 years old, or maybe they're 25, or maybe they're 35 and they haven't owned their first home. Like, what should they start to do?
Their first step they should do is talk to somebody like me.
Yeah.
To find out what they can afford.
To see what they can afford. Yeah.
What they can afford, where their credit is. Because sometimes people have stuff on their credit they didn't even know it was there, right?
Yeah.
Credit is so king right now. And that was another thing that's different today versus 2002 to 2006. In that period of time, somebody with a 620 FICO score, there was like $387 million of loans done during that period of time of low FICO scores, where today that's like 28 million.
Yeah.
It's so different, night and day different. It's important. Ever since the pandemic, the FICO score is so much more important because it just has. During that period of time, everybody raised their minimums, right? So you needed a 660 minimum versus a 620. Well, today that's back, but you don't want to. I do these things on TikTok where I pull a thing out if somebody asks a question. One was mortgages with bad credit, and I said you don't want to do it at all. Because you won't be happy with the process. You'll be upset with me. You'll be upset with everybody. You'll be upset with yourself. It's so much easier for me to work on your credit by just telling you, go get a few secure credit cards, add your wife on her.
Yeah, I was going to say work on your credit first.
On her.
Yeah.
What?
Work on your credit first.
Oh, huge. That even if you're at 680 or 700, work on it to get a 740. The best rates are at 760 and a loan amount of 400,000.
I love it.
Or greater.
So you got to work on your credit first, then talk to someone like Ed to figure out what you can afford.
And hold on, can I read it? Can I add that?
Yeah,
talk
absolutely.
to somebody like me first.
Okay.
Because I've had many people who've worked on their credit for 6 months or whatever. Then they come to me and nothing's changed because they did the wrong thing.
They didn't focus on the things that would actually make a difference.
Correct. We run scenarios through software that tells us what they should do and how we can get to a score. It'll tell us.
Yeah.
A lot of people work on old collections. Don't even touch them. If you touch them, they'll update to current, and now they've just taken more points away from you.
Wow.
Don't do anything till you talk to somebody like me.
Beautiful.
Or me.
Yeah, or Ed. Yeah, let's just say Ed. So let's say I've got my credit in order. I've figured out, how much I can afford. What next?
Then basically, so here's the problem. If you talk to me, just realize you're probably going to be in a house in 30 days.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I'm warning you because I will help you get to that point where if you have the money for the down payment, if you got the job and we have your credit right, we'll get you with it. You'll work with your realtor and you'll find a place, write an offer, get accepted. It's so much easier today to get your offer accepted than it was 6 months ago or a year ago. During the huge ones of the pandemic, it's so much easier. There's more houses finally on the market. Not a ton more, but enough to help most people.
It's moving. Yeah. So yes. what if you're not in a 9 to 5 and you're an entrepreneur, maybe a starting entrepreneur? Does that change things in terms of getting a mortgage? Does it make it easier, harder?
All right. So if you're a W-2, let's just say W-2 employee, right?
Yeah.
That's easier. We go off of what you're making per hour, salary, whatever. Those are your numbers. If you own a company and it depends on how you're paid yourself. You pay yourself a W-2 and then a K-1 or whatever because you're an LLC or a corporation, whatever. We go off of what you show as income from your W-2 and what your K-1 is. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, especially down there, that have companies and they only show a bare minimum of income, just enough to get by because they write certain things off and they show so they could show that they only make $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
They can't afford anything. So there are other programs for self-employed now where we can use bank statements for the company, like 24 months of bank statements or 12 months of bank statements, and we add up your deposits we look at how many employees and everything, figure out how much of the deposits that we can use. I have one that's somebody in Oceanside I'm doing right now that we looked at all his deposits, and basically his average income was only $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Looking at the bank statements, it's $280,000 a month.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that happens as entrepreneurs. So I think
the other thing about entrepreneurship is that you have to be doing it for 2 years.
Yeah.
All right. So
Stability.
I've had a client, right. So say that and the other way to do it is if you're tired of being an entrepreneur, because I had an architect who for years showed $20,000, $30,000. His wife hated it because they never had a steady income. And he came to me, wanted to buy a house. And I said, well, if you went to work for somebody as an architect, I could use that income the moment you get your first paycheck.
Yeah.
Because it's different the other way.
Yeah.
So what I mean is when you leave W-2 and you become an entrepreneur, that means sole proprietor, what corporation, whatever, you've changed how you get paid. You have to show that you can actually earn money.
You got to show that you've done it for 2 years, that there's stability.
Correct. Right. When you work, which is so stupid because when you work for somebody, there's no more stability than that.
Yeah.
I mean, because they can fire you tomorrow because they don't like what you did.
It could be another startup entrepreneur that could tank in the next 2 months or something, right? No, I think that's cool. So now talk me through, you started to get into this, and I want to go a little bit deeper. Obviously you have, according to the numbers that you've shared, it sounds like the real estate industry as a whole, in your opinion, is going to continue to go up for the next several years, foreseeable future, right? I think there's a lot of people that, just like you mentioned, they're thinking in their minds, just like you mentioned, there's a recession coming. And you kind of debunked that myth that, there's only been a couple of times that a recession has actually caused real estate to go down, and it's, percentages like 2% or whatever, right? So what are your views for the real estate industry over the next 2 years, the next 5 years, and the next 10 years?
I just hope it stops appreciating at the appreciation rate we have now.
Why is that?
Because it's going to get to a point where it's going to be so unaffordable. Right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
What's the average price in your area? Let's just forget your area. Let's talk about Oceanside, right? It's $800,000 to $900,000 for a house, right?
Yeah.
On average. So if that keeps appreciating at, let's just say 10%, that's $90,000 a year.
Yeah.
At what point does it get to a point where nobody who lives there can afford what they is?
You do that for 5 years, and what was a $900K home is now $1.5 million or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what right. I mean, they said San Diego was 28% last year, right?
Yeah.
To this date this year, and I mean that, and nationwide we were 18 to 20%. When you're nationwide 18 to 20%, that means California's through the roof.
Yeah.
Right? Usually we're 7% nationwide and California's at 10, 11, 12 or whatever. It's unfortunate. It's going to get to a point where I don't see the industry stopping, but it's going to get to a point where there's two things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
In the last year, we put so many people in low interest rates, right?
Yeah.
During the pandemic, we shoved more people during that period of time than we normally do in 10 years into really low 2% something interest rates.
Yeah.
Whether it's 15 years, 20 years, 30, whatever it is. Right now, the market is 85% of the houses sold in the market right now are resale, meaning not new homes, but they've been on they've resell. It's somebody had bought it years ago and they're reselling it. I have a feeling that that's going to go down to 50%. And this is my own thought. This is me. I think to a certain point, why would I want to sell my house when I have an interest rate this low and go buy a house somewhere else with an interest rate, even if it's a half a point or a point higher, same house, that's going to cost me anywhere from $400 to $500 additional a month. Say it's more than that. It could be $1,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
I took people from 4.5 down to 2.5, and they were saving $600-700.
Yeah. So basically people are going to stop. They're going to stop reselling and they're just going to sit in the homes.
Correct. We're going to stay in their homes way longer than ever. We used to be 7 years was average. Then it was 10 years. I think we're going to see 15 to 20 years. We're going to go back to the 50s.
Yeah, how would that affect the real estate industry as a whole?
Let's see. People want to buy a house, but nobody wants to sell. You tell me, how does that supply help?
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is your worst nightmare, which is things continuing to appreciate, is actually a very real possibility.
It's not my nightmare. I'm old.
It's
so
it's people who want to buy their first home's nightmare.
It's my kid's nightmare. And my grandkid's nightmare. I only have one grandkid because she did it early, but I know I look young. But the issue really is, that's all this stuff that's happening right now with our government and all that stuff. It's not really going to affect me. It's going to affect my kids, their kids, their other kids, and that's what you guys need to deal with.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that wrong, but you have to really look at what's happening. The market is for you. Buy as much real estate as you can buy and actually can afford.
Yeah.
Buy everything you can.
Yeah. I'm writing that down.
And I don't mean, and it would have been better for you to do this during 2007, 8, 9, 10, when they were much lower. The one thing about rentals, when you buy them, they have to pencil. And if you don't know what that means they have to cover the payment and you have to have profit from it. Yeah. If it doesn't pencil, don't buy it. Don't look. People get into trouble when they go, it's going to appreciate it. Ed said it's going to appreciate it 28%. Right? I didn't say that. I just said what has happened.
Yeah.
I want us back to a normal 4 to 5% appreciation. That's still amazing over years. That's how the Bay Area went.
Phenomenal investment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why the Bay Area bought all their houses at 30,000 and now they're selling them for 1.6 million, for over a 30. That's basically what we're going to run into is now your kids are going to buy them for 400. And can you imagine every house is 4 million?
Yeah.
Right. That's what's crazy. But if you look back and talk to our parents and the grandparents, what did you buy for your house for? $80,000.
Yeah.
Right. Or $60,000. Or I bought it for $5,000. So, I mean, you can still buy stuff elsewhere much cheaper, but you got to live there.
Yeah.
Or you got to rent it.
Yeah. So basically, moral of the story: buy what you can now. Buy what you can afford. Get in there and lock it in.
Buy over time, and buy what you can now, and buy over time. I mean,
yeah.
My biggest thing is if you're going to buy your first house, it's just you, or you're helping your kid buy their first house. Buy a duplex, triplex, a fourplex. 1 to 4 units is the same program as a single family house. Right?
Interesting.
So I've done this a lot for a lot of agents I know up in certain areas where their kid was like, hey, and I'm like, help them buy this, duplex over. And this one lady, she bought a triplex. She lived in one, rented out the other 2. FHA, 3.5% down. That's the big kicker right there. 3.5% down. FHA. She lived in there for a year, then had to go to school down where you are, and then came back and she'd rented the other room. It's at a 15 to 2. I think it's almost $2,000 a month profit now off of that. Wow. Those units. Yeah. Wow. So she went and bought a single family home. I wouldn't let her put 20% down. I ran the numbers and told her put 10% down. Use the mortgage insurance because the mortgage insurance was like $30. I'm like, divide 10,000. So divide that 10% extra you want to put down by whatever your mortgage insurance is, and that's how long it's going to take you to pay yourself back, right? Or the difference in the savings. It's going to take forever. Don't do it. Your house will appreciate, or you can pay it down over time. It won't matter. Just keep that money because you need it for something else or buy another opportunity. Cash is opportunity. Keep it because that's how you get it.
So to some of this, like, because this is killer advice, especially for a lot of people that are not necessarily big into the real estate space. Number one, basically what I'm hearing from Ed is like, get into real estate. If you're not in real estate, like, get into real estate, buy your first home, put as little down as possible. Pay the mortgage insurance, put as little down as possible, follow some of these plans. And then the big thing there is buy more if you can, right? So get in there, buy your first one, put as little down as you can, and then get in there and keep buying right now because the real estate is going to continue to appreciate, at least for the short-term foreseeable future.
Yeah, but if you're going to buy other properties that says rentals and stuff like that, you're buying those for, make sure it's covered the payment, that kind of stuff. That's why you're buying that.
Cash flowing positive.
Cash flow, and eventually, if you see the rates, rental, they're going to keep going up. So where you're at now is not where you're going to be in 10 years from now. So that's a totally different scenario when you're looking at that. So we we have a couple properties, but we bought 32 acres a couple years ago when nobody wanted land. We paid $137,500 for those 32 acres, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're building our forever home on it, right? But you can't get 32 acres for that same price these days.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Dude, Ed, I could keep talking on this topic for forever. We may have to get you back to go a little bit deeper on some of this stuff. One question I have to ask every single person on this show is if actually, let's ask this one. Like you mentioned, you've kind of been through a lot. We're talking about like where you're at right now, and really looking toward the problems that your kids are now thinking about, and your grandkid is as well. What would you if you were to look at your idea of what success is in your life, what would it be?
Well, it changes by your age.
Yeah.
Right? So, I have a daughter with special needs, and success for a certain period of time was being able to make enough money so I could spend time with her. I had her full time. I was a full-time dad with her, owned by myself, single dad with her. And so that was, at that time, was having enough money so I could spend the time with her, right?
Yeah.
So success is, it's different all the time. When I was 27, it was driving my 500 SL, living in Rancho Santa Fe. All right?
Yeah.
You know where that is? I lived there. I woke up one morning.
About two and a half miles inland from me.
I woke up one morning going, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. And re-looked at everything about, because I was pushed. I went from nothing to a lot of money in the mortgage industry at that time. And we made, a lot.
Yeah.
We'll just stay at that, all right? Because I don't want the IRS to come back at me from 20 years ago or more. And the problem was, you woke up going, this is not success. Yes, I have this, but I wasn't happy.
But I'm not happy.
You have to
I'm
define
not fulfilled.
Yeah. It's different for everybody. And like during 2006, 7, 8, it was all about having enough money so I could do triathlons. I don't look like I do triathlons, but during that period of time, I was doing triathlons and other stuff. And I enjoyed that. I had the time to do that. So, but now it's success to me is making sure I pass on the knowledge that I've acquired over this 20-year period of being in the mortgage industry, and losing things and going through the headaches I went through. It's never been it was not a perfect ride. There was times it was horrible, but coming out the other side, you're going, okay, I've learned a lot. What can I do to help people so they don't go through the same exact things that I went through? Or if they do, it's okay, I can help you. That's why I do those other 2 podcasts I do.
So now it's a lot more about serving others, giving back, and making sure that you can help.
And there is actually, I can't think of his name. He's going to kill me. But this guy he has, but there's a few of them by age. What you want to do during that period of time. Yeah. And the time I'm at right now, it's about what you just said, helping others, serving other people.
I love that, man. I love that. Dude, thanks for coming on the show, Ed. I think this is going to be super valuable for everybody. And for all of our Shit You Don't Learn in College fans out there, be sure to go check out the Shit You Don't Learn in College book, now available on Amazon, and www.sydlicbook.com. We give you some free giveaways on our website, sydlicbook.com as well. So go check out the book. Ed, thanks one more time. I think this has been absolutely stellar, man.
Anytime. You ever need me back, let me know.
We'll make it happen, man. Thanks.